I'm nervous. I'm hoping to fall out of my chair. That's what I promised if he said, and if he drew a line in the sand and said, we will have the public option no matter what. It is essential, it is critical, it is central. Those are the words we're looking for. It's important, it's nice, I like it, I want it. Those words suck. Okay, that means he's not going to do it. So, now, is that Michelle Obama? Yes, and she's going to be sitting next to some people that have had health care issues in the country, and President Obama is supposed to reference those people, and they'll do the usual thing of standing up, and then they'll say, I met Mary Jo in Indiana, and she had this, this, and this. Look, of course, the public option is not the end-all, be-all of the speech. It is, in the words that I'm saying Obama should use, it is an essential part of the speech, right? But it's not the only part of the speech. And it'll be interesting to see how much he goes after Republicans and whether he's really going to take the fight to them or if he's going to still put out this whole veneer of bipartisanship and hence be soft about, oh, reaching out, reaching out, reaching out. We've had 9 rounds of reaching out. This is the time to land a punch.
The president's cabinet.
Oh, for the love of God. And you know how this goes. As I told you earlier, there's a lot of different people that have written about this, Wall Street Journal, Politico, etc., and some saying that he is going to be very strong on insisting on the public option, others saying not the case and that the White House plans to negotiate it away later. Today, the Black Caucus came out and said it's public option or nothing. We will not vote for it if it does not have a public option. And John Conyers, Maxine Waters, and they claim to have 83 progressives in the House who agree with them. There's, of course, 42 members in the Black Caucus, 25 in the Hispanic Caucus, and 14 in the Asian Pacific members. And they think that they can, Conyers says he can rely on all of them to vote no if there is no public option in the final bill. Now, that's a strong statement, and it's great to see that. All right. Now, this is one of the parts that also annoys me about this. In fact, next time I'm thinking of cutting all of this out and just starting when the guy starts to speak. Okay. Because, the applause. I'll save my applause for when he says something interesting. Anyway, so he said earlier today on Good Morning America, I left too much ambiguity. I'm going to make things crystal clear here. Again, I don't quite believe him on that either. And we're going to find out in a second. Maybe I'm being too pessimistic. And he could give, it is eminently possible that he gives a fantastic speech, right? So that's why I'm not being overly pessimistic. But if he's not drawing lines in the sand, because Robert Gibbs has said over and over, his press secretary, we will not draw lines in the sand. Well, then how can you be crystal clear and not draw lines in the sand? I would like this and I would like that. Well, you've already said that. So I don't see how that's any tougher or clearer. So that's why I'm very curious what he's going to say here. And then when Robin Roberts pressed him on, is there anything that's non-negotiable? He said, yes, I don't want the deficit rising because of this by 1 dime. So his one non-negotiable is not the public option, is not rescissions, is not pre-existing conditions. It's a conservative priority, which is that the deficit does not increase. How come we didn't have that during the Iraq War? How come that wasn't a priority that the media insisted on, and that the Republicans insisted on, and that the Democrats insisted on, that the Iraq War would not raise the deficit by 1 dime, right? And how come that's the one thing that he mentioned in the Good Morning America interview? Look, I'm telling you, those are warning signs. And don't get me wrong, you know me, I'm a fiscal hawk. I don't want to raise the deficit at all. If they could do it without raising the deficit, fantastic. But is that my number one priority for healthcare reform? Not even close. And maybe he was just holding back, and maybe we haven't seen the excerpts with the public option, and maybe he didn't say it in the interview this morning because he wants to save it for his dramatic speech here, and he doesn't want to steal his own thunder. That is entirely possible. And Valerie Jarrett, Gibbs, and all the others were out doing press this morning, including the president, and then they will do press again tomorrow morning. Not the president, but Gibbs, Valerie Jarrett, it's one of his top advisors. And the one other thing he said in that interview that struck me is she asked him if he was surprised by the partisanship in politics? And he said no, but honestly, in his answer, he appeared to be surprised by it, which I found a little shocking. All right, here he is. Here's the President of the United States. For the love of God, sit down. Come on. Who isn't tired of this? I was tired of it when Bush was president. I liked it the first time with Obama, and now I'm way over it. How do they not get tired of this crap? JR, how many times are we going to have to sit through this, man? Okay, for the love of God, sit. It's the one time Democrats stand up.
Thank you.
He hasn't said a word yet. What are we clapping about?
Thank you.
Oh, come on, for the love of God.
So I get the feeling, though, if you're there,
Uh-huh.
they're probably enjoying it. If you're there, watching on TV is boring.
No. If I'm in Congress for my first term, yeah, maybe I'm hooting and hollering. Maybe I'm having a good time. If I'm Robert Byrd, man, I'm like, hey, somebody wheel me out of here. I can't take this anymore. Look, I know it's tradition, but some traditions are annoying. How long has this been going on now? Like for 3-4 minutes now? All right, speak for the love of God.
Members of Congress, I have the high privilege
Oh, no,
and
here we go
distinct
again.
honor to present to you the President of the United States.
Oh, no, not again.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you. Please, listen. Thank you. Thank you very much. Please, be seated. Madam Speaker, Vice President Biden, members of Congress, and the American people. When I spoke here last winter, this nation was facing the worst economic crisis since the Great Depression. We were losing an average of 700,000 jobs per month. Credit was frozen, and our financial system was on the verge of collapse. Now, as any American who is still looking for work or a way to pay their bills will tell you, we are by no means out of the woods. A full and vibrant recovery is still many months away. And I will not let up until those Americans who seek jobs can find them.
That gets a standing ovation. That gets a no, I'm anti-jobs.
Until those businesses that seek capital and credit can thrive. Until all responsible homeowners can stay in their homes. That is our ultimate goal. But thanks to the bold and decisive action we've taken since January, I can stand here with confidence and say that we have pulled this economy back from the brink.
All right, this is the first interesting one because are the Republicans going to stand?
No.
And it appears they did not. Democrats standing, Republicans not standing.
I want to thank the members of this body for your efforts and your support in these last several months, and especially those who've taken the difficult votes that have put us on the path to recovery. I also want to thank the American people for their patience and resolve during this trying time for our nation. But we did not come here just to clean up crises. We came here to build a future. So
that's a good line.
So tonight, I return to speak to all of you about an issue that is central to that future, and that is the issue of health care. I am not the first president to take up this cause, but I am determined to be the last.
As you can see, the Republicans are stone cold over there. And you could be the last in a couple of different ways. So that could be a good thing or a bad thing. I don't know.
It has now been nearly a century since Theodore Roosevelt first called for health care reform. And ever since, nearly every president and Congress, whether Democrat or Republican, has attempted to meet this challenge in some way. A bill for comprehensive health reform was first introduced by John Dingell Sr. in 1943. 65 years later, his son continues to introduce that same bill at the beginning of each session.
Longest serving member of the House. As you can tell, his dad was also in the House. They've been in the House for approximately 387
years. Our collective
years.
failure to meet this challenge, year after year, decade after decade, has led us to the breaking point. Everyone understands the extraordinary hardships that are placed on the uninsured, who live every day just one accident or illness away from bankruptcy. These are not primarily people on welfare. These are middle-class Americans. Some can't get insurance on the job. Others are self-employed and can't afford it, since buying insurance on your own costs you 3 times as much as the coverage you get from your employer. Many other Americans who are willing and able to pay are still denied insurance due to previous illnesses or conditions that insurance companies decide are too risky or too expensive to cover. We are the only democracy, the only advanced democracy on earth, the only wealthy nation that allows such hardship for millions of its people. There are now more than 30 million American citizens who cannot get coverage. In just a 2-year period, 1 in every 3 Americans goes without health care coverage at some point. And every day, 14,000 Americans lose their coverage. In other words, it can happen to anyone. But the problem that plagues the healthcare system is not just a problem for the uninsured. Those who do have insurance have never had less security and stability than they do today. More and more Americans worry that if you move, lose your job, or change your job, you'll lose your health insurance too. More and more Americans pay their premiums only to discover that their insurance company has dropped their coverage when they get sick or won't pay the full cost of care. It happens every day. One man from Illinois lost his coverage in the middle of chemotherapy because his insurer found that he hadn't reported gallstones that he didn't even know about. They delayed his treatment, and he died because of it. Another woman from Texas was about to get a double mastectomy when her insurance company canceled her policy because she forgot to declare a case of acne. By the time she had her insurance reinstated, her breast cancer had more than doubled in size. That is heartbreaking, it is wrong, and no one should be treated that way in the United States of America.
About damn time, man. They should have been saying this kind of stuff every single day. Beat it into people's head that the insurance companies are killing people for a profit. They're not treating them, and they're trying to dump them for a profit, and people are dying because of it. I mean, I love that he's saying it now, but this is what they should have said on day one through every day.
Problem of rising cost. We spend 1.5 times more per person on health care than any other country, but we aren't any healthier for it. This is one of the reasons that insurance premiums have gone up 3 times faster than wages. It's why so many employers, especially small businesses, are forcing their employees to pay more for insurance or are dropping their coverage entirely. It's why so many aspiring entrepreneurs cannot afford to open a business in the first place, and why American businesses that compete internationally, like our automakers, are at a huge disadvantage. And it's why those of us with health insurance are also paying a hidden and growing tax for those without it, about $1,000 per year, that pays for somebody else's emergency room and charitable care. Finally, our healthcare system is placing an unsustainable burden on taxpayers. When healthcare costs grow at the rate they have, it puts greater pressure on programs like Medicare and Medicaid. If we do nothing to slow these skyrocketing costs, we will eventually be spending more on Medicare and Medicaid than every other government program combined. Put simply, our health care problem is our deficit problem. Nothing else even comes close. Nothing else.
You know, that point could cut in two different directions. The Republicans could like that point too. Saying, see, we shouldn't do Medicare or Medicaid.
We know we must reform this system. The question is how. Now, there are those on the left who believe that the only way to fix the system is through a single-payer system like Canada's, where we would
Somebody
severely
clap.
restrict the private insurance market and have the government provide coverage for everybody. On the right, there are those who argue that we should end employer-based systems and leave individuals to buy health insurance on their own. I have to say that there are arguments to be made for both these approaches. But either one would represent a radical shift that would disrupt the health care most people currently have. Since health care represents 1/6 of our economy, I believe it makes more sense to build on what works and fix what doesn't, rather than try to build an entirely new system from scratch.
Now, everybody should agree to that. Republicans shouldn't have any problem with that at all. And they do appear to be standing, if I'm not seeing it wrong. Yeah, so...
And that is precisely what those of you in Congress have tried to do over the past several months. During that time, we've seen Washington at its best and at its worst. We've seen many in this chamber work tirelessly for the better part of this year to offer thoughtful ideas about how to achieve reform. Of the 5 committees asked to develop bills, 4 have completed their work, and the Senate Finance Committee announced today that it will move forward next week. That has never happened before. Our overall efforts have been supported by an unprecedented coalition of doctors and nurses, hospitals, seniors groups, and even drug companies, many of whom opposed reform in the past. And there is agreement in this chamber on about 80% of what needs to be done, putting us closer to the goal of reform than we have ever been. But what we've also seen in these last months is the same partisan spectacle that only hardens the disdain many Americans have towards their own government. Instead of honest debate, we've seen scare tactics. Some have dug into unyielding ideological camps that offer no hope of compromise. Too many have used this as an opportunity to score short-term political points, even if it robs the country of our opportunity to solve a long-term challenge. And out of this blizzard of charges and countercharges, confusion has reigned. Well, the time for bickering is over. The time for games has passed. Now is the season for action. Now is when we must bring the best ideas of both parties together and show the American people that we can still do what we were sent here to do. Now is the time to deliver on health care.
Yeah.
Now is the time to deliver on health care.
Yeah.
The plan I'm announcing tonight would meet 3 basic goals. It will provide more security and stability to those who have health insurance. It will provide insurance for those who don't. And it will slow the growth of health care costs for our families, our businesses, and our government.
He said the time for bickering is over. That's a nice line. But then he said the best ideas of both parties. He knows the Republicans have no
Take
ideas.
responsibility for meeting this challenge. Not just government, not just insurance companies, but everybody, including employers and individuals. And it's a plan that incorporates ideas from senators and congressmen, from Democrats and Republicans, and yes, from some of my opponents in both the primary and general election. Here are the details that every American needs to know about this plan. First, if you are among the hundreds of millions of Americans who already have health insurance through your job, or Medicare, or Medicaid, or the VA, nothing in this plan will require you or your employer to change the coverage of the doctor you have. Let me repeat this. Nothing in our plan requires you to change what you have. What this plan will do is make the insurance you have work better for you. Under this plan, it will be against the law for insurance companies to deny you coverage because of a pre-existing condition.
All right, now that's a real part of this plan that is helpful. We've talked about it a lot. You can't take that away from the plan. That would be real change. That's great. Now, a lot of people agree to that already, so that's positive. But this is nothing new so far. We knew this already.
As soon as I sign this bill, it will be against the law for insurance companies to drop your coverage when you get sick or water it down when you need it the most.
Same thing here. Very important part of the bill. It almost certainly will pass. It'll be a great change. But stuff we knew.
Place some arbitrary cap on the amount of coverage you can receive in a given year or in a lifetime. We will place a limit on how much you can be charged for out-of-pocket expenses, because in the United States of America, no one should go broke because they get sick.
On the cap issue, the Republicans were not clapping, except for Olympia Snowe from Maine. She was the only Republican clapping that I saw there. So that was an interesting note. And here, you know, sometimes on some of these issues, the Republicans are going along.
Be required to cover, with no extra charge, routine checkups and preventive care, like mammograms and colonoscopies, because there's no reason we shouldn't be catching diseases like breast cancer and colon cancer before they get worse. That makes sense, it saves money, and it saves lives.
All of this is going towards better coverage, but not lower costs.
That's what Americans who have health insurance can expect from this plan. More security and more stability. Now, if you're one of the tens of millions of Americans who don't currently have health insurance, the second part of this plan will finally offer you quality, affordable choices. If you lose your job or you change your job, you'll be able to get coverage. If you strike out on your own and start a small business, you'll be able to get coverage. We'll do this by creating a new insurance exchange, a marketplace where individuals and small businesses will be able to shop for health insurance at competitive prices. Insurance companies will have an incentive to participate in this exchange because it lets them compete for millions of new customers. As one big group, these customers will have greater leverage to bargain with the insurance companies for better prices and quality coverage. This is how large companies and government employees get affordable insurance. It's how everyone in this Congress gets affordable insurance, and it's time to give every American the same opportunity that we give ourselves.
All right, that is also fairly non-controversial, still good stuff. The real question is the public option in that insurance exchange, or is it only private insurance? So that's what we're about to find out. Here comes the moment of truth, probably.
Now, for those individuals and small businesses who still can't afford the lower-priced insurance available in the exchange, we'll provide tax credits, the size of which will be based on your need. And all insurance companies that want access to this new marketplace will have to abide by the consumer protections I already mentioned. This exchange will take effect in 4 years, which will give us time to do it right. In the meantime, for those Americans who can't get insurance today because they have pre-existing medical conditions, we will immediately offer low-cost coverage that will protect you against financial ruin if you become seriously ill. This was a good idea when Senator John McCain proposed it in the campaign. It's a good idea now, and we should all embrace it.
It doesn't look like his fellow Republicans want to embrace it. That was awesome. McCain's sitting there like, yeah. And those Republicans around him were very slow to rise. I love how awkward McCain looks.
even if we provide these affordable options. There may be those, especially the young and the healthy, who still want to take the risk and go without coverage. There may still be companies that refuse to do right by their workers by giving them coverage. The problem is such irresponsible behavior costs all the rest of us money. If there are affordable options and people still don't sign up for health insurance, it means we pay for these people's expensive emergency room visits. If some businesses don't provide workers health care, it forces the rest of us to pick up the tab when their workers get sick and gives those businesses an unfair advantage over their competitors. And unless everybody does their part, many of the insurance reforms we seek, especially requiring insurance companies to cover pre-existing conditions, just can't be achieved. And that's why under my plan, individuals will be required to carry basic health insurance, just as most states require you to carry auto insurance.
All right, we also knew this. Parts of that could be controversial, though, depending on whether they find people.
Businesses will be required to either offer their workers health care or chip in to help cover the cost of their workers. There will be a hardship waiver for those individuals who still can't afford coverage, and 95% of all small businesses, because of their size and narrow profit margin, would be exempt from these requirements.
Hear, hear. Oh, sorry.
But we can't have large businesses and individuals who can afford coverage game the system by avoiding responsibility to themselves or their employees. Improving our healthcare system only works if everybody does their part. And while there remains some significant details to be ironed out, I believe a broad consensus exists for the aspects of the plan I just outlined. Consumer protections for those with insurance, an exchange that allows individuals and small businesses to purchase affordable coverage, and a requirement that people who can afford insurance get insurance. And I have no doubt that these reforms would greatly benefit Americans from all walks of life, as well as the economy as a whole. Still, given all the misinformation that's been spread over the past few months, I realize that many Americans have grown nervous about reform. So tonight I want to address some of the key controversies that are still out there. Some of people's concerns have grown out of bogus claims spread by those whose only agenda is to kill reform at any cost.
There you go.
The best example is the claim made not just by radio and cable talk show hosts, but by prominent politicians that we plan to set up panels of bureaucrats with the power to kill off senior citizens. Now, such a charge would be laughable if it weren't so cynical and irresponsible. It is a lie, plain and simple.
That was strong language. All right, we just connected one to the jaw. Okay, that was a shot across the bow for the Republicans. I mean, he just... All right, that was a bit of a pimp hand. Not bad, not bad. We're getting warmed up.
Now, there are also those who claim that our reform efforts would ensure illegal immigrants. This, too, is false. The reforms I'm proposing would not apply to those who are here illegally.
Oh, did you hear that? Somebody said you lied.
And one more misunderstanding I want to clear up. Under our plan, no federal dollars will be used to fund abortions, and federal conscience laws will remain in place. Now,
oh man, it got tense in there. That was intense.
my health care proposal has also been attacked by some who oppose reform as a government takeover of the entire health care system. Now, as proof, critics point to a provision in our plan that allows the uninsured and small businesses to choose a publicly sponsored insurance option.
Here we go.
Administered by the government, just like Medicaid or Medicare. So, let me set the record straight here.
Please.
My guiding principle is, and always has been, that consumers do better when there's choice and competition. That's how the market works.
Come on, Obama. Come on, do it. Stand up for it. Stand up for justice. Stand up for choice. Stand up for the consumers.
Unfortunately, in 34 states, 75% of the insurance market is controlled by 5 or fewer companies. In Alabama, almost 90% is controlled by just one company. And without competition, the price of insurance goes up and quality goes down. And it makes it easier for insurance companies to treat their customers badly by cherry-picking the healthiest individuals and trying to drop the sickest. By overcharging small businesses who have no leverage, and by jacking up rates. Insurance executives don't do this because they're bad people. They do it because it's profitable. As one former insurance executive testified before Congress, insurance companies are not only encouraged to find reasons to drop the seriously ill, they are rewarded for it. All of this is in service of meeting what this former executive called Wall Street's relentless profit expectations. Now, I have no interest in putting insurance companies out of business. They provide a legitimate service and employ a lot of our friends and neighbors. I just want to hold them accountable.
All right, you got him on the ropes. Put him away. Put him away. Come on.
And the insurance reforms that I've already mentioned would do just that. But an additional step we can take to keep insurance companies honest is by making a not-for-profit public option available in the insurance exchange.
Don't quiet him down.
Let me be clear.
I want a standing ovation for that. That's right. Get up. Stand up.
Let me be clear. It would only be an option for those who don't have insurance. No one would be forced to choose it. And it would not impact those of you who already have insurance. In fact, based on Congressional Budget Office estimates, we believe that less than 5% of Americans would sign up. Despite all this, the insurance companies and their allies don't like this idea. They argue that these private companies can't fairly compete with the government. And they'd be right if taxpayers were subsidizing this public insurance option.
Thank you.
But they won't be. I've insisted that, like any private insurance company, the public insurance option would have to be self-sufficient and rely on the premiums it collects. But by avoiding some of the overhead that gets eaten up at private companies by profits, and excessive administrative costs, and executive salaries, it could provide a good deal for consumers. It would also keep pressure on private insurers to keep their policies affordable and treat their customers better, the same way public colleges and universities provide additional choice and competition to students without in any way inhibiting a vibrant system of private colleges and universities. Now,
good example.
It's worth noting that a strong majority of Americans still favor a public insurance option of the sort I've proposed tonight. But its impact shouldn't be exaggerated by the left, or the right, or the media. It is only one part of my plan, and shouldn't be used as a handy excuse for the usual Washington ideological battles. To my progressive friends, I would remind you that for decades, the driving idea behind reform has been to end insurance company abuses and make coverage available for those without it. The public option is only a means to that end. And we should remain open to other ideas that accomplish our ultimate goal.
Schwang, wang, wang.
And to my Republican friends, I say that rather than making wild claims about a government takeover of health care, we should work together to address any legitimate concerns you may have.
Yeah, good luck with that. Good luck with that. Legitimate concerns? Legitimate concerns. Yeah, let's see what kind of legitimate concerns they come up with after this speech.
For example, some have suggested that the public option go into effect only in those markets where insurance companies are not providing affordable policies. Others have proposed a co-op or another nonprofit entity to administer the plan. These are all constructive ideas worth exploring. But I will not back down on the basic principle that if Americans can't find affordable coverage, we will provide you with a choice.
Oh! If he's saying what I think he's saying there, that's really positive. But it depends. What does he mean by choice? So is he going back to the public option, or is he going to do it under another guise?
And I will make sure that no government bureaucrat or insurance company bureaucrat gets between you and the care that you need.
That's a very good line, needed to be said a long time ago. So it's very good that he's saying that. I would have emphasized that a little bit more and explained that a little bit more about how insurance company bureaucrats get in the way all the time.
Finally, let me discuss an issue that is a great concern to me, to members of this chamber, and to the public. And that's how we pay for this plan. Now, here's what you need to know. First, I will not sign a plan that adds one dime to our deficits, either now or in the future.
He said that before, but I think that's very ambitious, and it could be fodder for the Republicans to
I will
nitpick.
not sign it if it adds one dime to the deficit, now or in the future, period. And to prove that I'm serious, there will be a provision in this plan that requires us to come forward with more spending cuts if the savings we promised don't materialize.
That is very serious. That's new.
Now, part of the reason I faced $1 trillion deficit when I walked in the door of the White House is because too many initiatives over the last decade were not paid for, from the Iraq War to tax breaks for the wealthy.
And notice how he looked at the Republicans as he said that? There you go, that's another nice punch. That's going to be in a lot of the papers. That was a good quote.
I will not make that same mistake with health care. Second, we've estimated that most of this plan can be paid for by finding savings within the existing health care system, a system that is currently full of waste and abuse. Right now, too much of the hard-earned savings and tax dollars we spend on health care don't make us any healthier. That's not my judgment. It's the judgment of medical professionals across this country. And this is also true when it comes to Medicare and Medicaid. In fact, I want to speak directly to seniors for a moment, because Medicare is another issue that's been subjected to demagoguery and distortion during the course of this debate. More than 4 decades ago, this nation stood up for the principle that after a lifetime of hard work, our seniors should not be left to struggle with a pile of medical bills in their later years. That's how Medicare was born. And it remains a sacred trust that must be passed down from one generation to the next. And that is why not a dollar of the Medicare Trust Fund will be used to pay for this plan. The only thing this plan would eliminate is the hundreds of billions of dollars in waste and fraud, as well as unwarranted subsidies in Medicare that go to insurance companies. Subsidies that do everything to pad their profits, but don't improve the care of seniors. And we will also create an independent commission of doctors and medical experts charged with identifying more waste in the years ahead. Now,
everybody talks
these
about
steps
waste,
will
but it's hard to
ensure that
eliminate.
you, America's seniors, get the benefits you've been promised. They will ensure that Medicare is there for future generations. And we can use some of the savings to fill the gap in coverage that forces too many seniors to pay thousands of dollars a year out of their own pockets for prescription drugs.
Yeah, we already know he has a deal that does not address that nearly well enough. He should ask for the ability to negotiate. He should have the ability to negotiate with the pharmaceutical companies, but he negotiated that away.
So don't pay attention to those scary stories about how your benefits will be cut, especially since some of the same folks who are spreading these tall tales have fought against Medicare in the past.
There you
just
go.
this year supported a budget that would essentially have turned Medicare into a privatized voucher program. That will not happen on my watch. I will protect Medicare.
Another nice roundhouse there, again aimed at the Republicans, saying, hey, listen, you guys are the ones that didn't want Medicare in the first place. Now you're pretending that you're going to protect it, and you're doing it with lies. So in some parts of the speech, it's been nice and heavy.
Now, because Medicare is such a big part of the healthcare system, making the program more efficient can help usher in changes in the way we deliver healthcare that can reduce costs for everybody. We have long known that some places, like the Intermountain Healthcare in Utah or the Geisinger Health System in rural Pennsylvania, offer high-quality care at costs below average. So the Commission can help encourage the adoption of these common-sense best practices by doctors and medical professionals throughout the system. Everything from reducing hospital infection rates to encouraging better coordination between teams of doctors. Reducing the waste and inefficiency in Medicare and Medicaid will pay for most of this plan. Now, much of the rest would be paid for with revenues from the very same drug and insurance companies that stand to benefit from tens of millions of new customers. And this reform will charge insurance companies a fee for their most expensive policies, which will encourage them to provide greater value for the money, an idea which has the support of Democratic and Republican experts. And according to these same experts, this modest change could help hold down the cost of health care for all of us in the long run. Now finally, many in this chamber, particularly on the Republican side of the aisle, have long insisted that reforming our medical malpractice laws can help bring down the costs of health care. Now,
he's going to accept that idea. He's going to say it's a good idea. And that's part of him reaching out to Republicans. But that's a sensible way to reach out to Republicans. I don't have any problem with that. Probably should have done that a while ago.
there you go.
That's fair and bipartisan. That's real bipartisanship.
There you go. Now, I don't believe malpractice reform is a silver bullet. But I've talked to enough doctors to know that defensive medicine may be contributing to unnecessary costs. So I'm proposing that we move forward on a range of ideas about how to put patient safety first and let doctors focus on practicing medicine. I know that the Bush administration considered authorizing demonstration projects in individual states to test these ideas. I think it's a good idea, and I'm directing my Secretary of Health and Human Services to move forward on this initiative today.
But notice, the Republicans get what they want today. The progressives maybe get what they want later, maybe.
Add it all up, and the plan I'm proposing will cost around $900 billion over 10 years. Less than we have spent on the Iraq and Afghanistan wars, and less than the tax cuts for the wealthiest few Americans that Congress passed at the beginning of the previous administration.
Those are good points that should have been repeated and repeated and repeated. So we're going to get health care for everybody, and it's going to cost less than the two wars that we've had or the tax cuts.
Most of these costs will be paid for with money already being spent, but spent badly in the existing healthcare system. The plan will not add to our deficit. The middle class will realize greater security, not higher taxes. And if we are able to slow the growth of healthcare costs by just 0.1% each year, 0.1%, it will actually reduce the deficit by $4 trillion over the long term. Now, this is the plan I'm proposing. It's a plan that incorporates ideas from many of the people in this room tonight, Democrats and Republicans. And I will continue to seek common ground in the weeks ahead. If you come to me with a serious set of proposals, I will be there to listen. My door is always open. But know this, I will not waste time with those who have made the calculation that it's better politics to kill this plan than to improve it.
Another slap at the Republicans. There's been a lot of those tonight. I like those.
I won't stand by while the special interests use the same old tactics to keep things exactly the way they are. If you misrepresent what's in this plan, we will call you out. And I will not...
Yeah, about time. Really?
And
when?
I will not
Today?
accept the status quo as a solution. Not this time. Not now. Everyone in this room knows what will happen if we do nothing. Our deficit will grow, more families will go bankrupt, more businesses will close. More Americans will lose their coverage when they are sick and need it the most, and more will die as a result. We know these things to be true. That is why we cannot fail, because there are too many Americans counting on us to succeed. The ones who suffer silently, and the ones who shared their stories with us at town halls, in emails, and in letters. I received one of those letters a few days ago.
Here we go.
It was from our beloved friend and colleague, Ted Kennedy. He had written it back in May, shortly after he was told that his illness was terminal. He asked that it be delivered upon his death. In it, he spoke about what a happy time his last months were, thanks to the love and support of family and friends, his wife Vicki, his amazing children who are all here tonight. And he expressed confidence that this would be the year that health care reform, that great unfinished business of our society, he called it, would finally pass. He repeated the truth that health care is decisive for our future prosperity. But he also reminded me that it concerns more than material things. What we face, he wrote, is above all a moral issue. At stake are not just the details of policy, but fundamental principles of social justice and the character of our country. I've thought about that phrase quite a bit in recent days. The character of our country. One of the unique and wonderful things about America has always been our self-reliance, our rugged individualism, our fierce defense of freedom, and our healthy skepticism of government. And figuring out the appropriate size and role of government has always been a source of rigorous and, yes, sometimes angry debate. That's our history. For some of Ted Kennedy's critics, his brand of liberalism represented an affront to American liberty. In their minds, his passion for universal health care was nothing more than a passion for big government. But those of us who knew Teddy and worked with him here, people of both parties, know that what drove him was something more. His friend Orrin Hatch, he knows that. They worked together to provide children with health insurance. His friend John McCain knows that. They worked together on a patient's Bill of Rights. His friend Chuck Grassley knows that. They worked together to provide health care to children with disabilities. On issues like these, Ted Kennedy's passion was born not of some rigid ideology, but of his own experience. It was the experience of having 2 children stricken with cancer. He never forgot the sheer terror and helplessness that any parent feels when a child is badly sick. And he was able to imagine what it must be like for those without insurance. What it'd be like to have to say to a wife or a child or an aging parent, there is something that could make you better, but I just can't afford it. That large-heartedness that concern and regard for the plight of others is not a partisan feeling. It's not a Republican or a Democratic feeling. It too is part of the American character. Our ability to stand in other people's shoes. A recognition that we are all in this together. That when fortune turns against one of us, others are there to lend a helping hand. A belief that in this country, hard work and responsibility should be rewarded by some measure of security and fair play. And an acknowledgement that sometimes government has to step in to help deliver on that promise. This has always been the history of our progress. In 1935, when over half of our seniors could not support themselves and millions had seen their savings wiped away, there were those who argued that Social Security would lead to socialism. But the men and women of Congress stood fast, and we are all the better for it. In 1965, when some argued that Medicare represented a government takeover of health care, members of Congress, Democrats and Republicans, did not back down. They joined together so that all of us could enter our golden years with some basic peace of mind. You see, our predecessors understood that government could not and should not solve every problem. They understood that there are instances when the gains in security from government action are not worth the added constraints on our freedom. But they also understood that the danger of too much government is matched by the perils of too little. That without the leavening hand of wise policy, markets can crash, monopolies can stifle competition, the vulnerable can be exploited. And they knew that when any government measure, no matter how carefully crafted or beneficial, is subject to scorn, when any efforts to help people in need are attacked as un-American, when facts and reason are thrown overboard and only timidity passes for wisdom, and we can no longer even engage in a civil conversation with each other over the things that truly matter, that at that point we don't merely lose our capacity to solve big challenges. We lose something essential about ourselves. That was true then. It remains true today. I understand how difficult this healthcare debate has been. I know that many in this country are deeply skeptical that government is looking out for them. I understand that the politically safe move would be to kick the can further down the road, to defer reform one more year, or one more election, or one more term. But that is not what this moment calls for. That's not what we came here to do. We did not come to fear the future. We came here to shape it. I still believe we can act, even when it's hard. I still believe.
Not a lot of applause from that side.
I still believe that we can act when it's hard. I still believe we can replace acrimony with civility and gridlock with progress.
Yeah.
I still believe we can do great things, and that here and now we will meet history's test, because that's who we are. That is our calling. That is our character. Thank you. God bless you, and may God bless the United States of America. Thank you.
All right. As you might imagine, I have a lot to say. First, let me start with what he was saying at the end there. He's an interesting guy. It looks like he really thinks he can convince the Republicans to do the right thing. That's the sense I got in his Good Morning America interview this morning. That's the sense I got with the end of that speech. They're not going to play ball. I mean, I can't believe he's come this far. And look, I hope what he's doing is that he's trying to reach out to the Republicans in the audience. I don't mean in the congressional audience, I mean at home. Because can you reach Republicans, conservatives, independents at home? Of course you can reach some of them. That's how he won the election. But if he thinks he can get the Republican senators and congressmen to say, you know what, golly gee willikers, you're right, Barack. This is the time to shape the future. And we are going to get together and roll up our sleeves and give you our real ideas and not try to kill this bill. That is not going to happen under any circumstance. So if he's still waiting on that and still being pleasant to them and reaching out to them, waiting for that to happen, he's going to wait 4 years. Now, having said that, the part of the speech that I liked the most was the exact opposite, when he reached out and slapped him across the face and said, hey, listen, here are some of the things that have been said, and they are lies. That was very clear, right? And he said these charges are false. And he seemed to at least draw a line in the sand with what he will tolerate, what he will, in terms of taking punch after punch, hit after hit, on things that are just simply not true. Now, I like that he drew the line in the sand there, and I hope that he forcefully makes his case going forward. And if he should have been saying a lot of these things through August, through July, through June. At least the fight has been joined now on that front, that we are not going to get swift-boated anymore, and we're going to fight back against some of these ridiculous charges like the death panels, etc. But now we get to the heart of what he said, as to the substance of what this change will be. And there's the real question, because he stated a whole bunch of things that we have agreement on. The Republicans are on board for already, what he called the 80% agreement that we have. Now, the Republicans claim to be on board for that. If you strip that down to just that 80%, I guarantee you they would vote against it anyway. But for the moment being, they claim, oh, yeah, we're fine with those, but we're against other parts of the bill, right? So, yes, better coverage for people. You don't get cut for pre-existing condition. Oh, here's this clown. All right, I will get to the all-important public option analysis in a second. Let's listen to Charles Bustani, the Republican response.
Saw firsthand the need for lowering health costs. Republicans are pleased that President Obama came to the Capitol tonight. We agree much needs to be done to lower the cost of health care for all Americans. On that goal, Republicans are ready, and we've been ready, to work with the President for common sense reforms that our nation can afford. Afford is an important word. Our country's facing many challenges. The cost of health care is rising. Federal spending is soaring. We're piling huge debt on our children, and families and small businesses are struggling through a jobless recovery with more than 2.4 million private sector jobs lost since February. It's clear the American people want health care reform, but they want their elected leaders to get it right. Most Americans wanted to hear the President tell Speaker Pelosi, Majority Leader Reid, and the rest of the Congress that it's time to start over on a common-sense, bipartisan plan focused on lowering the cost of health care while improving quality. That's what I've heard over the past several months in talking to thousands of my constituents. Replacing your family's current health care with government-run health care is not the answer. In fact, it'll make health care much more expensive. That's not just my personal diagnosis as a doctor or a Republican. It's the conclusion of the nonpartisan Congressional Budget Office, the neutral scorekeeper that determines the cost of major bills. I read the bill Democrats passed through committee in July. It creates 53 new government bureaucracies, adds hundreds of billions to our national debt, and raises taxes on job creators by $600 billion.
Job creators. That's
it cuts
great
Medicare
euphemism.
by $500 billion while doing virtually nothing to make the program better for our seniors. The President had a chance tonight to take the government-run health care off the table. Unfortunately, he didn't do it. We can do better with a targeted approach that tackles the biggest problems. Here are four important areas where we can agree right now. 1, all individuals should have access to coverage, regardless of pre-existing conditions. 2, individuals, small businesses, and other groups should be able to join together to get health insurance at lower prices, the same way large businesses and labor unions do. 3, we can provide assistance to those who still cannot access a doctor. And 4, insurers should be able to offer incentives for wellness care and prevention. That's something particularly important to me. I operated on too many people who could have avoided surgery if they simply made healthier choices earlier in life. We do have ideas the President hasn't agreed with. We're grateful the President mentioned medical liability reform, and we hope he's serious. We need to establish tough liability reform standards, encourage speedy resolution of claims, and deter junk lawsuits that drive up the cost of care. Real reform must do this. Let's also talk about letting families and businesses buy insurance across state lines. I and many other Republicans believe that that will provide real choice and competition to lower the cost of health insurance. Unfortunately, the President disagrees. You can read more about all of these reforms at healthcare.gop.gov. These are common sense reforms that we can achieve right now without destroying jobs, exploding the deficit, rationing care, or taking away the freedoms American families cherish. This Congress can pass meaningful reform soon to reduce some of the fear and anxiety families are feeling in these very difficult times. Working together in a bipartisan way, we can truly lower the cost of health care while improving quality for the American people. I'm Dr. Charles Bustani. Thank you for listening.
All right. First of all, I'll give him this. It was not a bad delivery. I mean, sometimes these rebuttals are hideous, right? He got in, he got out, he made his point. It's too much spending. Let's start over. But God, we're so reasonable. We're willing to work on all these different issues that we agree on. So I thought he actually did a pretty decent job given the situation that he's in. Now, but understand what he's actually saying. What he said in the beginning is, no, we're not going to vote for any of this. We want to start over. And what did the president tell you during his speech? It's a way of making sure you kill health care reform again, and then you think that the Republicans are going to start over and really reach bipartisan compromise on a new process later? No. It's all a front to kill it because these guys all get paid by the private insurance companies. And even though the president made very clear what would be government run and what would not be government run, he came back out, Bustani did, and said, oh, it's government run health care reform again. And I loved the euphemism that he used for the wealthiest Americans, job creators. We don't want to tax the job creators. I have a lot to say on that probably on tomorrow's show. There's some amazing stats about how much of the money made in this country are made by the top 1% and the top 0.1%, and what that does to the rest of our economy. All right, now back to the public option. Now, look, in the end, of course, this speech will be judged on, is he going to be able to push through health care reform that is real and strong, okay? And there are two components of it. As we just told you, there's a component about better coverage. And it looks like it really is going to have better coverage. You don't get denied for pre-existing conditions. They don't cut your medical care if you get really sick, okay? Those are things that absolutely need to be addressed, and it looks like they're going to address them. That's very good. Now, the second part of it is, do we make it less expensive for you and I in premiums that we pay? And then eventually for the premiums that government pays for Medicaid and Medicare as well. So bringing down costs. And if you don't have the public option, there are not a lot of things in the bill that bring down costs. There are a lot of things that add to the cost. Hey, we're covering people that need subsidies. We're covering more people that didn't have health care coverage. And we're covering them better because we're covering their pre-existing conditions, etc. But you got to find a way to bring down costs. Now, if they were the Republicans or some of these so-called moderate Democrats who were true conservatives, they would care about that a lot. And then, as Obama pointed out, what the public option is choice and competition. Those are actually conservative principles, along with progressive principles. They're American principles. We all agree to those. So you can keep your private insurance, or you would have a choice of a competing public insurance. And if it doesn't work, or if it's not lower cost, then you don't have to buy it, right? Now, is he going to demand it? That was the key question in this speech. And in the end, you still come out with a big fat question mark. Because he said to the left, oh, you know, when you say we have to have it, I don't agree with you. Oh, and the right, when you say we absolutely won't have it, I don't agree with you. Okay, that's a nice way of framing yourself as being in the middle. That's nice politics, okay? And that might drive up your numbers a little bit, but which way are you going to go? And when he finally put his foot down, he said something very vague. The key phrase was, I demand that at the end, there will, and I'm paraphrasing here, we just watched the speech, that there be choice for consumers. Now that sounds good, but what does he mean by choice? That's the key question. If he means public option, great, fantastic. He could mean co-ops. He could mean maybe trigger for a public option later, that would present choice to the consumer later, not right now. There's a lot of things he can mean by choice. So it sounds tough because he said in the beginning, look, here's what I have to have. But is it really tough because we don't really know what he means by choice? And one thing that was very problematic is he said, look, this would only apply to, the public option would only apply to 5% of Americans anyway. That's a way of diminishing it, dismissing it, and if he really believes that, then maybe he thinks, well, you know what, if it's just 5%, I could negotiate that away and it doesn't kill anything. But it's not about the 5%. It's not about who it would apply to in the beginning. It's about as he explained in the speech, I wish he really meant it, and we'll find out if he did. Because if it provides real competition, then it could drive down the cost of private insurance. So it's not just that we can go and buy a public option, because some of us won't even be able to because of the way that the bill is structured. But it also provides competition that drives down the cost of everything. And without it, there is no incentive for private insurance to bring down their costs. And there's a lot of incentives for them to bring it up. And after the speech is over, look, a lot of us that watch it, I thought it was a great speech, don't get me wrong. He's fantastic at giving speeches, and I don't mean that in some sort of dismissive way or patronizing way. Really, by the end of the speech, you're like, yes, he was strong with them, and it looks like he really cares and wants to get this done, and I feel bad that I questioned his motives before, right? There was 2 or 3 different times in the speech that I actually felt that. You know, because I said, look, he brought in Rahm Emanuel from the beginning. He cut these deals from the beginning. So was he really going to have the public option from the beginning? And as you watch that speech, you feel like he's got his heart into it, right? But then, after this speech is over, those Republicans are going to go back to attacking. The lobbyists are going to go back to all their congressmen and say, yeah, nice speech. Now, do you want the money or you don't want the money, right? And all those things are going to still happen just like they would in the real world, before or after the speech, with or without the speech. And when that rubber hits the road, what is Barack Obama going to insist on? That's the question. And unfortunately, tonight, that question was not really answered. Now, one part was answered, which is, hey, I'm not going to stand for this nonsense from the Republicans anymore. And if they say things that are lies, I'm going to call them lies. And the fight is on. The battle is joined. We go and we fight against all these falsehoods that they're putting out there. That's fantastic. On the second part, how is this healthcare reform going to look like at the end? That is not answered yet. So, and if anything, if you look at it with a cold eye, logical eye, rational eye, you would think that he said, well, look, I'm going to have some sort of choice in there, but not necessarily the public option, which he says only covers 5% of the people. So if you're a big advocate of the public option, I don't think you come out really that happy from this speech. If you're an absolute believer in Obama and think, no, Cenk, don't worry. He's going to find us a way to get that choice one way or another. And he's going to find a way to bring down costs one way or another. I love you for it, but I got to see it in writing. Trust but verify. So the real question is, what does he do next? What is the action that is taken next? And we'll find out, and we'll definitely stay on top of it here on the Young Turks and let you know. All right. We're halfway there. We got to get all the way there.